Okay, great. So thank you everyone for attending the webinar. This is a very exciting webinar. I would say we have some guest speakers that will come on and speak. One of them is one of our current equity fund grantees. So very excited about that. I know everyone has been wanting to learn more about other grantees and what they're doing. So very excited to have our first grantee kind of share what their program is and what they're doing. If you haven't already done so, please put in your name in the chat box function. I used that for attendance the other day, last month, and then last month when I sent out the slide deck and everything, I put the attendance on there, and then I realized I'm like, wait a minute, I talked with her during the webinar, and so just make sure you put your name in on the chat box so I can put you down as attendance for your agency. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with sharing my screen. Okay, so thank you all for attending. This is a very exciting webinar. I am excited to see what we're going to hear today, but as you can see, I'm going to give you some quick little ELD updates just for you guys all to have a little status update. Guest speakers, we have Valeria and Valerie today. I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit here, but they're very excited. They will be speaking to us, giving us some really good information about their programs, about the tribes, and all other areas in which it would be better for all of us to be informed of. We're going to have PSU give a little evaluation update, any information that would be good for us to know, and then ELD reminders. And so that is what we'll cover today. Like I said, this is recorded. If anyone from your agency, your organization is missing or cannot get into the Zoom, if there's any Zoom hiccups, this will be uploaded onto YouTube, and I will send the slide decks afterwards. Once the video is uploaded onto YouTube, I will send it all in one email, as always. And so if you haven't done so, please put down your name, what agency you're from. This is the way I'm taking attendance. Thank you all for the ones that are here today. And thank you for having a representative. I'm gonna go ahead and move forward with ELD updates. We received grant surveys from every single one of you. So thank you all for sending them in on time. And then just to give you an overview, we have 12 million that we are giving, actually a little bit above 12 million. We had, a grantee that had opted out. So there is their funding available. So we have around, 12.5 that we are giving out. The total requested was above 14 million. And so just to give you all, just so you understand, there will be some cuts when it comes to the budget. If we could, we will definitely give everyone what you requested. We are going through the grant surveys. There are some questions, some additional questions that I will be reaching out to a couple of grantees, just because the narrative is different from the numbers that was given. For example, a number said we're serving 95, but the narrative it said we're serving 120, and so just wanted to make sure the numbers were correct. Wanting to get some clarity on a couple of things so we can get some clarity on what the program is that we're covering that's new, that's different. And so just to give you a heads up, that is where we're currently at. We have a meeting with the Early Learning Systems Director next week to go over our recommendations for funding. Once we get the green flag from them, green thumb saying to them, yes, this looks good, there's no other additional questions, then we will send out the intent to award notification. And so that would be coming out in this next couple of weeks. But there are a couple of grantees that I'll be reaching out to just for some clarity, as our team has continued looking at the grant surveys and trying to see where funding will go. So there's that. End of the year report. Last year, our end of the year report had just a couple of narrative questions that we just added to the performance report. This year, we're going to have our own separate end of the year report, just like all other reports. We will be asking you additional information. For example, how many staff does it take to run your equity fund program? How many sites do you have? What are the address for the sites? You say you serve this county. Do you have one site there? Do you have two sites? Those are information that we don't know and don't have. And so since the equity fund is a part of the program's team, it would be good to have for us to compare apples to apples when we're looking at programs, and so right now we have, for example, ERCO just in one serving different counties, but we only have one address, so we want to have the different sites. We have other programs that have said, Kimberly, if you know your site address for equity fund grant for your equity fund grantees, if there was one close to one of our sites and they're doing a professional development in this or that, we can invite them to come attend if they're very close and nearby. And things like that would be beneficial for all the programs to have similar information. And so just information, we will be asking that. I will send you the report. It's being produced right now. We're adding last minute touches, and adding additional questions. I'm having a couple of people look at it, but this report will be released June 15th, and then you have until August 1st to complete it. I understand that some of you are grantees to multiple programs. For example, you might be an OPK program as well, or preschool promise program. So you have multiple end of the year reports. And so that's a lot of reports to be due at the same time. So just want to give you the time that the deadline of August 1st. Okay. So next, as you can see from the agenda, we have Valeria Atanasio. She is from the ELD. I'm going to have her introduce herself while I change slides and I put her slides up. Okay. And so Valeria, you can go on ahead. Okay.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Slushchisan, Meganim Valeria Atanasio. Good morning. My name is Valeria Atanasio. I am a member of the Grand Ronde Nation, and I also serve as the Tribal Affairs Manager for ELD. So I get to do some really exciting work, and including working with some of your ECEF grantees. And I see Val here today. Hi, Val. To support our tribal nations in their provision of early care and education services. And that includes all of ELD's programs, clusters, and services that we offer. And so really excited to be here today to share a little bit about our work with tribal nations via the Tribal Advisory Committee and some of the legislation that recently passed over the last couple of years that support this, and then some of our visioning forward. So I'll go to the next slide, Kim, thanks. So I'll give a little bit of background about this work, because I'm not sure how much folks know in this group or how much you've been tied into it. But we first started obviously with the other regional early learning hubs. So we came up with legislation in 2019 that was known as House Bill 2055 that helped establish a tribal specific early learning hub. This built upon our existing legislation that started with, if you all know, started with 6 hubs in 2013 and then grew to 16 in 2015. Each hub was tasked with working with tribal nations that overlap with this, with their specific regions. And so this direction left coordination with tribes to happen at the regional level, which is in a direct conflict with the government to government relationship between the state of Oregon, ELD, and the 9 tribes located in Oregon. So with the current hub system, there had not been really a consistent method or support structure in place which hubs could access to engage with tribes that overlap within their region. And this contributed to varying levels of engagement and unintentionally really a lack of cross-sector localized supports for tribal children and families living in Oregon. Next slide. So the purpose of House Bill 2055 that was passed helped to establish a tribal early learning hub. This begins with pulling together what's called the Tribal Advisory Committee, which is a 21-member year-long collaboration between Oregon's 9 tribal nations and the ELD. The purpose of the Tribal Advisory Committee is to help recommend design, goals, and organization for the new tribal early learning system entity known as the Tribal Early Learning Hub. What resources we garnered with this passing of House Bill 2055 was fully funding my position at the division, so Tribal Affairs Manager, to help lead this project development and oversee implementation alongside our Tribal Advisory Committee. Additional resources were garnered for grant and aid to help cover costs of facilitation, meetings, and startup to be utilized within the second year of the biennium. So this was about roughly $150,000 that's going to be going out in grant and aid to our tribal nations. During government to government consultation with the education cluster, tribes consistently requested that, we develop this tribal hub to address some of the issues that I previously mentioned in the background. And so we're hoping that this will help solve some of our problems, and we know that we'll still need to seek more funding and find more resources and ways that support, this endeavor. So I can also share that the Tribal Advisory Committee, as it was established, we have included 2 representatives as each of the tribal nations. And there are 3 non-voting representatives that include a member from the Early Learning Division, a member of the Legislative Commission on Indian Services, and the Early Learning Council, which is the ELD's governing body. Next slide. So, during the process of first creating this Tribal Advisory Committee, the ELD and TAC recognized some challenges with the initial convening of this group. So the ELD met with our 9 tribal nations in the government to government education cluster to discuss thoughts on amending language to House Bill 2055 and new statute. We met with them in December and early January, and at this meeting, tribal governments in the state came to an agreement on a path forward that respects tribal sovereignty and the government to government relationship. So what that was House Bill 4033, and this modified membership of the Tribal Advisory Committee to better reflect the unique government to government relationship that the state has established with our 9 tribes. This committee since has successfully commenced with 17 tribally appointed representatives from 9 different tribes. There are 2 pending from our Burns Paiute tribe and 1 vacancy pending a recommendation from the Klamath tribe currently. I've included on this a web page, which many of you may be familiar with already, but this is a way for our partners to follow the work of the Tribal Advisory Committee. We have a web page on our ELD website, and the link is here. Next slide. So as you can imagine, the role of electing a chair and vice chair is really critical in this process and will help us be successful. By electing a tribal representative within a direct leadership role, we're hoping it will help to ensure the state's accountability in this process and ultimately empower tribes to be the true driving force of this work. As the Tribal Early Learning Hub is intended to serve the 9 federally recognized tribal governments, who better than to tell us how that should be done than our tribal nation partners. So I can say to Val, you're on the call today, so feel free to jump in whenever you feel like it, but she has been voted in as our committee chair. And we also have Sandy Henry Cow Creek, who's also an ECEF grantee, who has been voted in as our vice chair for this committee. Next slide. So this is just a picture of who's on the committee currently and who's entered into or who's been appointed, to this committee. These committee appointments were selected by the tribal nations themselves. So they were able to put forward the folks that they felt would do the best job in representing tribal interests and positions on policy, programs, services, and really the whole gamut of what the ELD does. Thank you. That committee that was on the previous page helped develop a really important part of our work, which is our charter. So this charter is available online, but it goes over really the statement of purpose as it relates to the committee. What are some of our biggest priority areas and goals? And it also outlines some of the committee structure of how we make decisions and how we come together in that collaboration, and outlines a little bit of the roles and responsibilities and commitments that we've made to one another in this committee structure. Next slide. Thank you. So through this process, some of our meeting structure has also changed due to the feedback loops and the consultation that we're conducting with tribal governments on an ongoing basis. We have started with, or we begin every meeting with these 4 items that allow us to really come together in community and in a positive way. We have our chair who opens us up with a welcome or asks somebody to provide like a prayer or a welcome for, beginning our work within every meeting, and then they go through the official roll call. Public testimony is something that I wanted to mention in this meeting because it is something that, because this is a public meeting, we would encourage anybody who has any questions or ideas or things to bring forward in their own work and space that could lend us, another perspective on some of the work that we're doing within the committee. So you are able to submit public testimony, and all the information could be found on our TAC webpage on the ELD website. And then we go over some of our group agreements with our Tribal Advisory Committee facilitator, who helped us develop a list of agreements. And those are really just for our working relationship and reminder of, again, coming into the meeting structure in a good way and, refocusing why we're here and what we need to get accomplished at every meeting. We added to this intergovernmental coordination, and I'll ask you to go to the next slide so I could talk a little bit about that. Thanks. So this intergovernmental coordination, the purpose of this meeting time is really to work from that tribal state collaborative approach. And so at the start of each of our meetings, we begin with a tribal government partner breakout room that, make sure that no agency staff are present during that time. This will allow for tribes to discuss the ongoing efforts of our shared work more freely. And it also serves as an opportunity for our Tribal Advisory Committee members to form their direct partnerships as a newly formed committee and share ideas. And then they discuss those items, and then they bring them back into the bigger, or into the bigger group with state agency staff to discuss like what are some of the challenges coming up, or what are some of the things that tribes feel are going really well in the work, or if there's any focal areas that we're missing. Typically they bring those items to us after they've discussed together. Next. Thank you. So additional resources and support. I talked a little bit about this. $601,000 is just the start, and then having my position be permanent in the LD is just the start. We are, consistently looking for what other resources and support can we leverage within our early learning system to ensure that this is a successful project and operation, and really, goes through the planning stages and development of this project in a way that's transparent and that's communicated throughout for both tribal and other interested parties in and outside of Oregon. So we are utilizing some of our PDG or preschool development grant funds to contract with a project facilitator and communication strategist that will be about a year contract over the next year. The purpose of this project facilitator contract is for a third party to work with the ELD and Tribal Advisory Committee to help us plan, guide, and manage the design work and ensure that we successfully draft administrative rules for the implementation of the tribal hub and develop a operational plan. So one certain outcome of this will be a tribal hub implementation plan that will take us through the first years in what does building the hub, the tribal hub to reach full capacity and operations look like. And then the purpose of the communications contract is for a third party to work with ELD and the Tribal Advisory Committee to develop a tribal hub logo, marketing strategy, and a strategic communications plan that helps identify how important information will be communicated to interested parties, both tribal and non-tribal, throughout this project development. Next. So I want to mention too, some of the other ways that we're making progress and hoping that this will lend more capacity and ability for us to work with our tribal nations. We, as you know, are in a transition phase to establish the Department of Early Learning and Care. Within this new agency structure, we will have a dedicated unit known as the Office of Tribal Affairs and Relations. Currently, right now, there's 2 open postings on our website. We are hiring for a Tribal Affairs Coordinator and a Tribal Affairs Director for this transition. And some of the goals that we're hoping to accomplish with this change will be that we establish a culture of tribal consultation at our agency moving forward and expand the support reaching our early learning system for serving tribal children, or excuse me, tribal and indigenous children and families. Sorry if there's a typo there. With these positions, we'll see increased capacity needed to operationalize tribal consultation across the agency and support the existing needs of our tribal partners through the implementation of the tribal hub. And that's about as much as I have of an overview for you, but I wanted to actually leave some time for questions, or if anyone has any comments they'd like to make. I also invite Val if you'd like to share anything or make any commentary about the information that I just gave today.
I think you did a wonderful job. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And I left my contact information, which we can send out these PowerPoint slides to folks, because I also want you all as ECEF grantees and people who are interacting with our agency to know that I'm a resource to you as well. Oftentimes I receive requests to make connections with some tribal partners on certain items or review something and know, how to connect you to a group that so you can follow your internal sort of consultation processes that you want to, or community engagement that you want to seek with specific tribes or indigenous children and families. And thank you for your time. I don't see any questions, but I'm here, so.
Well, thank you, Valeria. I keep wanting to say Valeria. I think it's so important. It's so important that here at the ELD we're trying our best to be as inclusive and as equitable as we can through all processes and processes. And so for me, just the fact that there's going to be a hub just for the tribes, just for us to expanding any like efforts and supporting tribal and indigenous children, like it's needed. And so we know that there's additional steps that are always taken that are needed to make sure we're more inclusive. And so just wanted everyone to be aware, we have some tribes that are equity fund grantees. We have some programs that serves just Native American children, and parents. And so I want everyone to understand who we're all serving the equity fund. And so this is the first step in helping everybody learn a little bit more about each other. And so thanks for doing that. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to connect with me or connect with Valeria. If you connect with me, I will send you to Valeria for any questions you may have. She's my peer. She's my person, my go-to person. And so she and I work very, very closely together. And so, and just know we'll be able to answer any questions. Next, what I do have is um, we have our equity fund grantee Valerie, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. She's going to do an overview of their equity fund program. You know, I hear so much from suggestions to emails that I get. Hey, we want to know what other equity fund grantees are doing, and like, and every program is so different and unique in your own way. I mean, and so like I have the privilege of getting to know all that information, but then you know your program, and sometimes I'm like, wait, this connects with this grantee, this connects with this grantee. They're doing the same thing, but they're doing it this way. So I get the privilege of knowing all this like information, and like it's so powerful when I get to share it with the ELD leadership. And so I've heard so much about you all wanting to learn more about each other. So we have our first equity fund grantee that's going to do a presentation on their program. And so I'm going to go ahead and Valerie, do you want me to control your slides as well? You just say next slide. I can do that. So, Valerie, I could go ahead and have you start and I will pull up your slides. Okay. Oops.
Ituktikadu, Nika Shawashliu Lumpayat, Nika Ichliu Bashnam Ungi Valerie Switzler, Konin Kia Deacon Stimum Vatlan Kia. My name is Valerie Switzler. I am from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. My English name or my Indian name is Lumpayat, and we are language teachers for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I'll have Radine introduce herself.
Ituktikadu, Nika Ichawash Kliu Tessana, Bashnam Ichliu Radine Johnson, Banin Kiak, Dikadaba Daya Wigwa. Good day, my Indian name is Tessana. My English name is Radine Johnson, but I go by Deanie, and I'm happy to be here today.
Okay, so I hope you all have had your morning coffee as we get started with these slides. I know sometimes that sometimes we kind of get a little bit long, so just give me that sign that tells me that it's time to move on. The Confederated Tribes is a sovereign nation in the middle of North Central Oregon. The Warm Springs Indian Reservation is over 1,000 square miles of in North Central Oregon, and its main town is also known as Warm Springs, and it's 2 hours southeast of Portland, over the mountain. And the reservation is bounded by the Cascade Mountains on the west, and the Metolius and Lake Billy Chinook on the east, and by the deep canyons of the Deschutes River. Warm Springs Reservation is home to the Wasco, Warm Springs, and Northern Paiute tribes. So we could go on to the next slide. That gives you a little idea where we're coming from. It has only been recently that a dangerous trend is being reversed. We're now seeing that language and culture are essential to a child's health and happiness. The Early Childhood Center has included the language culture in the past, but not in a sustainable way. They had the teachers coming in for 15 minutes at a time, which was not sustaining our language. The Teachers of the Culture and Language Department want to impart their knowledge onto the new teachers as we are now becoming the elders of the community. COVID had hit us so hard during this project, and we lost 3 essential positions here in Warm Springs in this program alone. And so, you know, as we get older, as now we have been left with these tasks, we move to teach new teachers. Next slide, please. The early childhood had humble beginnings. They started out in a one room in what is now called the Wellness Center. And they moved into different parts. When they grew bigger, they moved into the education building, the Presbyterian church, and even a duplex in the back of the education center. You know, it took all of this moving around, which was not good for our children. And in 1989, nearly 33 years ago, the Early Childhood Center was constructed and made for our children. And even at that time, we had elders that had knowledge innate. They had knowledge of the language, the culture, the traditions. But as time moved on, 33 years is a little stretch of time. But as time moved on, those teachers aged out. And so our Early Childhood Center was being left with no teachers that had this knowledge in the center itself. And all the while, all of our surveys, all of our communities' cries were saying we need to have language, culture, and tradition taught in our early childhood program. Next slide, please. The Early Childhood Education Center had trouble obtaining qualified teachers. And for their program, the project's main goal was to provide training for teachers that would specifically build cultural specialists in the center itself. In a typical day, they would learn songs, dances. They learned about the Confederate tribes and the government and their lifeways. They also learned soft skills and occupational skills trainings, how to be successful in your job, being on time, time management, and computer skills. So our teachers were given all of this in almost like a boot camp like setting where everything was trying to be infused into them. But the most important thing that was being infused was our history, our culture, and our traditions. And as you could see in this slide, we have 4 elders here who are working, and you see all of the work that is set out in front of them. They are working on a dictionary right now that will be a teaching aid for the teachers and for the community. Next slide, please. The tribal members had advocated for years for language to be taught in the daycare. And it was with no success because the Head Start, the daycare system had set up requirements in their standards and requirements that the directors at that time did not see how they were able to meet all of those standards and marry them to the language, culture, and tradition. When, you know, after we've been through this process now a little bit, we are finding out now that the language, culture, tradition, and all of these standards and requirements meet those and marry those very well. And so we're really happy that, you know, we can bring up these new teachers. The teachers that we've had that have come through our program have ranged from 19 to 47 years old, from when the time that they come into our program, they then are being transitioned out into the early childhood program, so that now the early childhood program has those teachers that have that knowledge that they can impart on to the children. So it's been working really well. And the next step that we're hoping for is that all teachers will now receive this language and culture training every day. And so those that have been taught in our program, they will be the leaders. This young man right here is in the early childhood education parade, and those are the parents and teachers behind them. And so, you know, it's Mother's Day parade where the children accept and love these teachers to no end. And they've taught them bear dances. They've taught them how to sing a meal song. And so the pride that the grandmothers and aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers have for these children show when they come to these programs for their children. Next slide, please. You know, over 30%, 37% of the population in Warm Springs is under the age of 18. This is a huge chunk of people that we have that are under the age of 18. And because our population is so young, we are severely disconnected from our own language, culture, and traditions. And so with us teaching these teachers, we then are teaching the majority of our population the language, songs, traditions, cultures of our people. And what's most important that we have always taught and told is that language is that thread that holds all of this together. And the social dances that we have that were taught, like the bear dance, the bunny hops dance, those are all, you know, I wish I had pictures of all of them and to share with you, and that you could actually see video, but I'm not that technical savvy, so I don't have those, but I can share those at some point when I do have somebody who can document those for me as well. And you know, the sense of hopelessness that our people have felt for a long time because we don't have you know, access to jobs, access to those things that make a community, you know, self-generating its own money, and small businesses. And, you know, 2.5 hours from the nearest metropolitan area is a long ways. And some of these folks don't get off the reservation except to maybe every 2 weeks to go to Remin, you know. And so this sense of hopelessness, we're hoping will be reversed once the children help share that sense of pride, that they know who they are, where they come from, and where, you know, where our strengths are and our resilience comes from. And next slide, please. The most important part of our work is the children. And as you can see there, we have teachers, and there's the second gal is been in our program the longest, and she is learning how to speak Ichishkin and does very well. And so these children will have an important start as we move into the Warm Springs K-8, where language is taught in the school every day. And so what we're hoping for is that the language teachers will meet with these teachers and share what is being taught at the ECE so that it can be transitioned into the WSK8. And last, again, my name is Valerie Switzler, and Radine, because of one of the project manager becoming ill, Radine stepped in and has hit the ground running. And the last remaining teachers we do have in the program are Whitney, Del Rey, Rain, and Charlene, and the elders that I've mentioned before. But these folks are all partners, and we're all doing what we can to preserve language and culture for our community. So thank you for that. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Does anyone have any questions? Kamisha? Oh, you're clapping.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if you come up with any questions later, definitely just send Valerie an email. Valerie, if you could put your email in the chat box, or send it to me and I'll forward it over. Thank you for sharing what your program is doing. Like, I think it's amazing work. I love how the language and culture is being preserved and passed on, and so I love how the elders are involved and helping. I know that in my community, it's all about passing it on through word of mouth, through storytelling. And so I love that you all are doing that. And so everyone, that this is one of our equity fund programs, is it similar to yours? Maybe not. Is it different? Definitely different. And so, but so unique. This is what I love about the equity fund. Every single program is so different from each other, but it's embracing and it's learning and it's preserving culture and language. It's it's providing services to children and families and other communities that need it the most. And so just very, very excited to have you, Valerie, be the first one to kind of share your program. And so in hoping that others would be inspired to share yours as well. So if you do want to share your program, please, send me a message and say, Kimberly, I'd love to share our program. That'd be great. I definitely want to make sure we save time for everyone for us to learn more about each and every one of us moving forward. Okay. So next on the agenda, I have PSU. Let's see. Who should be the co-host? Do you have any slides to share?
No slides. We just have
No
a quick
slides?
update. Yes.
Okay, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Kimberly. And I would just echo everything that you just said. That was totally amazing and really look forward to hearing from more folks. So I don't know who's next up, but very much looking forward to that. So yeah, we just have some brief updates. Actually, I would call it happy news to share. Yay. And the ELG folks have a little bit of a heads up about this, but we wanted to share out with the whole group. I know that we have shared with you all that we have been working with the ELG to specify the goals for the evaluation, what we want to demonstrate, what we want to learn. And this is really complex, right? Especially when we think about the number and the variety of the organizations, all the different kind of programs that you all are running, and the different kinds of data collection that you're already doing. And maybe even more importantly than that, we're really trying to design this evaluation in a different way, right? So that it is hopefully authentically culturally responsive and really speaks to your priorities. So that's adding like an additional layer to this already complex work that the evaluation leadership group is doing. So given all this, Kimberly can tell you, we were starting to feel pretty rushed and kind of concerned that our original timeline really might not allow us the space to engage in the kind of authentic process that we're all really committed to. So we brought these concerns back to our ELD partners, and the ELD said, we agree, it's not enough time. And so the very good news is that we now have this extended timeline for doing the design work. So instead of beginning data collection this fall, we have now an additional calendar year to work on the design and really come up with a design that we all feel good about, with data collection starting next fall, so the fall of 2023. What else was I going to say? So in addition, right, this is going to help us with the design. We are thinking that we might be able to get a little more creative with the tools that we are thinking about using, and be able to provide a greater level of technical assistance to you all when we start thinking about actually implementing data collection and rolling out all of those processes. So it really feels like good news. Thank you, Kimberly. Jenny, who's not here, the sort of person behind the scenes who's been doing so much advocacy on behalf of all of you in this evaluation. So much gratitude for that. Also, and equally important, the ELD was able to identify some one-time only supplemental funds to support this design process and a little bit of the TA that we are hoping to provide when we move into data collection. So prior to that, there weren't really any designated funds in your ECEF funding that were earmarked for evaluation. So we're also working to kind of mitigate that to a certain extent and hopefully be able to better support participation. So I think all of this is just really good news. I also feel like it's a sign of like the times shifting a little bit and the ELD kind of growing in its understanding that the kind of work that we are all doing together takes time and money, right? Those are just some basic realities. So really feeling good about that. I can pause if there's any questions, and then Amber's going to do just a quick update on the interviews. I think you're good, Amber. Thank you all.
Hi, so as we presented a little bit ago, we are embarking upon interviews with as many ECEF grantees as we can speak with. They're really just conversations for us to learn more about your approach to culturally specific early education and what all goes into that, and so that we can really uplift your work in our reporting, in, developing the evaluation and providing context to your work. So we, Alexis and I have either scheduled or completed already 17 interviews. They've been amazing conversations, really fun and really inspiring. We have 4 organizations that said they're just like beyond capacity at this point and can't talk to us, and it's definitely not a requirement. And at the same time, we do have some time. So if at any time you've said no, but feel like, okay, now I have some bandwidth, we would love to incorporate your approach and your ideas and your knowledge into this work. And we're still following up with 5 more of you all. So we're going to be persistent. We'll give calls maybe next. We've been doing some emails, but if anybody has any questions or anything, please reach out.
All right, thank you, PSU. As always, if you have any questions, please just send me an email or send PSU an email. They will get back to you. I have just one last slide before we close this session, and it's just simply ongoing supports. If I got an email that I need to respond to, I apologize for having not responded yet, about the new staff orientation. These are the same time every single month. If it does not work for you, totally fine. I have met with grantees at a different time to say, Kimberly, we have a meeting, ongoing meeting every time of that month. Let's schedule a different time for our staff, and so just know I'm totally flexible with that. So new staff orientation, that still happens monthly. It's been going great every single month. There's usually like 2 to 4 individuals that attend, and and it's been very good, very engaging. And then also TA supports, there hasn't been people in attendance. I think it's because if there's questions, we've just been kind of meeting instead of during that certain time. And so if there's ever any time for TA supports that you may need, just know there's an allocated time once a month for us to connect. The rapids test kit, I know there's another spike right now. Please go and request the kits. They are available. I know that there are storage issues. Thank you for all the grantees that completed the survey. It really allowed us to know what we should do next. And so I've passed that information forward to leadership. And so they are aware of who wants to share some of their allocated kits, who wants to keep theirs just in case. And so we have all that information. So, and lastly, the monthly reports for April is due on the 15th. And so just please submit those. If you have not already done so, please put your name in the chat box. That is what I'm using for attendance for this webinar. And so those are just the reminders for now. You should hear from us the intent to award notification by the next week or so. And so, like I said, we have a meeting next week with Early Learning Systems Director Alyssa Chatterjee. And once we confirm and got approval of the funding, then we will send that notification out to everyone. And so be on the lookout for that. Other than that, if I email you within this next couple of days about any clarification on your survey, please email us back. We do need that information. There's a couple of you that I will be emailing. And so other than that, thank you for attending, and I will upload this and you can send it to whoever in your agency that was not able to attend today or you think would benefit them from listening to this information that we learned today. And so thank you all, and have a good rest of your week. Bye.
Hi, Kimberly.
Yes.
This is Brandy from NAIA.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry, my computer just kicked me off right at the end and I got back on. And so I'm sorry
No
if you
worries.
said this. Yeah, I don't know why my computer does that. Sometimes it just kicks me right on off. But
No,
I was interested. We have some, yeah, tech. It's great when it works, right? We have some new employees coming on in the next month, and also our current ECEF employee. I was hoping to attend one of the orientations just so that they would have a better idea. And so I'm not sure if you already announced when those are this month or when the next ones are, but
June 16th. June 16th from 11 to 12. Just send me an email and say, hey, Kimberly, please invite all these individuals to your next new staff orientation, and then I will do so. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Goodbye.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.